Well, hello, everybody. We are live. It
Yes.
is Friday, October the 25th. Yep, the 25th. And I am Keisha. I'm one half of the host of the Regal Mindset podcast show. Jay, go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get to our guests.
Absolutely. I am Joy, the coach. I'm your millionaire, your mystic, your mindset transformer, and we are here gathered together in his name, and we're ready for the topic tonight.
Hey, man. So, listen, we have a very special guest. I will go ahead and introduce her. I met her some years ago. I think in Memphis was the first time at a different event, different setting. But Dr. Yumika Hankton is also joining us tonight to have this conversation so we can unpack some of the things that we have dealt with as little people and navigated through life.
Ooh,
So, go ahead, Doc, if you want to introduce yourself and give us your credentials.
Sure. Thank you. I am Dr. Yumika Hankton. I am a licensed clinical psychologist and I support Black people in thriving always and in always.
I love it. Perfect, perfect,
love it.
perfect. So listen, I've been playing around with this kind of topic or subject, right, for some time. And the reason it kind of came about is before a personal experience that I had. And I'll just share a little bit and then we can go ahead and get into other people's experiences and
Mhm.
why those things happen. So I was dating a young lady, some years ago, and we were having a disagreement or argument, right? And clear as day for me, my experience, I literally saw her as a little person, right? This is a little
Mhm.
person having a full blown tantrum, right? As an adult. And that really baffled me in the sense that I'm looking at her having this tantrum. And I thought to myself, like, what is it that I do? Or do I have things that I've not yet resolved that little Keisha needs to address?
Mhm.
And so
That's
that's
good.
kind of where the premise of this show is kind of headed. And we invited the doctor to kind of help us navigate and unpack those things. Doc, have you had experiences like that, or has anyone shared anything similar to that?
So I've had those experiences personally and
Oh,
professionally, right? So
okay.
Mm.
the thing about I call it the inner person. I
Okay.
think we're calling it the little child, is that it really houses all of our childhood experiences, our emotions, how we react to certain situations. And so if that little person is hurt, scared, confused, frustrated, the adult in us actually displays all of the stuff that that
Mm.
little kid has not been able to resolve or address. So
Mm,
yes, see it often
wow.
in the professional work.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah.
So is it? I guess the question is, when people don't recognize it within themselves and it has to be brought to their attention by someone else, what's the likelihood of that kind of that conversation going off in a way that people can one receive it and start making some changes?
So honestly, it depends on how you deliver that information. Because if
Okay.
that person is responding to you from a place of trauma or
Mm,
hurt, they may not be able to receive what you're saying if it is said in a way that feels aggressive or harsh. But if you're able to say, listen, I want to have a difficult conversation with you. I'm noticing these things. I care about you and I want you to be well. That could cause that defense, that wall that they may have up, to come
right.
down long enough to for them to hear the essence of what you're saying. But if they are defensive and if it's a harsh approach, they won't be able to hear what you're saying because they're trying to defend themselves.
Right. Right. Good point.
Right.
Good point. Good point. Jay, was you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna piggyback off that because I seen a clip on TikTok as usual,
Of
and
course.
it was a gentleman, and he was like talking about his triggers. And if you push this button, and the lady that was teaching it, she said, well, why is the button there to be pressed? And it's like, in these situations, we're always, from one perspective, it's like, oh, well, you knew I had these triggers. Well, it's not my job to diffuse your triggers.
Mhm.
And then on the other side, it's like you have to be responsible for your triggers, because especially if you're coming into a relationship, you didn't cause those triggers. So then
Mm,
therefore I should not be responsible when I light the match and that on that fuse and it goes kaboom. And so how? And I'm asking, how do you navigate through that where it's healthy?
Mhm.
Because it's like you can approach a situation unknowing that that's a trigger that you're about to bring up. And then the person is always on the defense of, well, I got to, it's a trigger, it's a no for me. And it's like, well, then let it be a no. But that's my perspective. Go ahead.
So I see it in two ways. One, no, you are not responsible for the person's trigger. It is their responsibility to do the work necessary to heal or learn how to manage when they're triggered. Even with therapy, years of work and healing, because we're human, we're going to be triggered. And so it's up
Hmm.
to us to do the work to make sure that we can manage when triggered. Now, when you know a person has a certain trigger and you care about them, I'm not saying that you have to tiptoe around them, but as much as possible, try to be sensitive to their triggers. But it's up to them to do the work to heal. They may not be responsible for the injury, but they're responsible for their healing.
Okay. Okay.
That's good.
That's a good point. Now, even though you say, right, we're responsible for our own healing, there's sometimes, right, I can speak for myself that I may not be aware that little Keisha has some things that she needs to address until I take an assessment of myself and be honest, really, and transparent, be like, you
Mhm.
know what, I just don't, in my adult self now, maybe I should seek some counseling or something to
Mhm.
work through this because it just isn't right. But not
Hmm.
everybody's there.
No, and you're right, because it's scary if you really take the time to self-reflect.
Hmm.
What's there may be hurtful, it may be scary, it may be the thing that the person has been running from for a really, really long time. But how do we get to a place where we're ready to heal the inner child? We have to be willing to self-reflect and be honest about what we see when we do that reflection, because the problem in not doing the reflection and not healing the inner child is that every decision you make, how you respond to others, you're not making that decision from an informed, healthy place. You're making that decision from the lens of hurt or trauma, and that can greatly impact relationships, whether romantic, social, on the job. And so, self reflection and willing to be vulnerable and honest with ourselves helps us to get to a place where we can do that work.
Mm, okay, that makes
You made a
sense.
good point. You said on the job, because a
Mhm.
lot of people always relate these triggers to solely being about relationships. But we see it in Gen Z because they will crash out in 2 seconds. And especially in the workforce. And you be like,
Mhm.
no, I'm giving you, feedback and you're taking it. Well, you don't like me anyway. And it's like, no, I'm literally just trying to coach you
Mhm.
through, and they relate it to a personal emotion. And I think we've all done that,
Mhm.
and then some of it do have some truth in it. That person really may not just like you, but
Mhm.
then there's some opportunities where you're coaching a person, giving them feedback on how to do better. And no matter how you sandwich it, no matter how you go in with, hey guy, you're doing good, but then as soon as you add that but or forever, or I mean however, or anything like that, it's a light switch to you don't like them. You're always attacking. It's like, wait a minute, you need some healing, because that's not what I said.
Mhm. Again, so how we interpret people's statements, their actions, is based on the health of our inner child. Because if there's trauma there, right, if there's neglect or abandonment, if they're coming from an environment that was
Mhm.
abusive, right, even your constructive feedback can feel painful. It can feel
Hmm.
like abuse.
Mm.
Mm, mm. So I'm wondering if there's a difference in a person or people, who have. I think we all have insecurities, right? Is there a difference between our insecurities and the little person within us, or are they the same?
So that's a good question. So I think that some of our insecurities can be the result of those childhood
Ah,
experiences. So were we
okay.
nurtured? Were we did we feel loved? Did Were we told that we matter, right? Or that we were beautiful? Or were we told that, you are ugly, or made to feel shame? So I think
Hmm.
the insecurity could be the result of experiences that we had in our childhood. Now, I also want to be So I don't want to blame everything on the child, because many of us grew up in healthy environments, right? We were loved and nurtured and acknowledged, and then things happen in adulthood that
Mm-hmm.
cause us to experience hurt or trauma, and so we're responding from that place of hurt. So I don't want to put everything on the child.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Well, I think the reason that I asked that question that way, again, I'm drawing on my own experiences here, and I'll just share really quickly. When I was a kid, um, first of all, I grew up in the church, right? So I had my grandparents, they were evangelists and deacons, and my mom was also in the church. And so whenever they would come and ask me to do something, I had no problem with doing it, with the exception of praying, right? So in my mind, when they would ask me to come and pray, I prayed silently, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think in my mind, I told myself, whatever I have to say between, God and myself is between he and I. I don't want everybody else to
Right.
know. That's in my childhood brain. That's what I'm thinking, right? But in retrospect now, what I think it is, dealing with my internal sexual conflict, right? And how I identify and see myself. I didn't want to bring that part of me to God, because not even thinking that he knows who you are, he loves you just as you are, and it is okay to be who you are, and feel guilty about that. So I always kept that part of my relationship with him to with him.
Right.
And so I guess I internalized that as an insecurity versus being the little Keisha, not being at a place where I needed some healing in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, that's good.
Yeah, that was a lot of, actually, I think I didn't realize that until I was probably in my 30s. Yeah, my 30s. Yeah, I just really didn't feel comfortable praying, and a lot of it, I think it was just because I, wasn't quite sure, again, if God really accepted me as a person with my sexuality. So whatever conversation we had, again, was between us. And then on the flip side of that, if I'm being honest, also my grandparents and my father and my grandfather and my mother, I felt like they was better at praying anyway, so they could get the other stuff
Now that may have been
good
the
quick.
insecurity.
That's a real
Yeah,
thought.
yeah.
It
So
is a
let the
real
folks who
thought.
are good at it do it.
Yeah, so let them
Yeah.
do it. I'm just talking to him about some other stuff. So that's kind of how I internalized.
Yeah.
I was going through therapy because I was going through grief counseling. And the therapist did, it was called EDMR,
EMDR, eye movement
that.
desensitization and reprocessing.
Right. And I tried it because I'm open,
Mhm.
to healing. And the issues that I was having with work were related to my daddy issues.
Mhm.
Mm,
Mhm.
Now, all of these years, I've always said, "Oh, I don't have a daddy issue," which I don't. And I'm explaining that. Don't have a daddy issue. I always had a Thurman issue. That's his name. I had a Thurman issue because you knew I existed. I'm your
Mhm.
oldest.
Mhm.
I'm the first
Mhm.
original, all of this. So I had a him issue. But I felt that God always had somebody in my life that compensated on the emotional side and everything I needed from a father. So I didn't feel neglect in that area. I felt loved. I felt protected. I felt beautiful,
Mhm.
what have you. I felt wanted. And so I didn't know how deep it was until I did that session. And I didn't even know those two had relation. I'm dealing with issues that I were having at work because it always felt like I'm the issue at work. And when we was doing the session, I began to go back and think of, and it brought back my first ever job and the interaction that happened. I was 15 when I started working, and the manager, now she truly did hate my guts. I don't know why. She really did hate my guts. She treated me horrible. Plus, I was 15.
Mhm.
So she treated me horribly. But then when we kept going through the session and she asked me some question, and next thing you know, my daddy popped up. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I began to unpack the it wasn't even necessarily abandonment, it was more rejection. Because even though I didn't cry loud enough to say, I want you in my life, I still subconsciously needed that part of him because I felt like you picked everybody else except me.
Mm.
When you came to the house, you picked up my sister. You didn't pick me, and I'm your daughter. You know, things like that. When I went to his house, his younger daughter, he had like a whole shrine of pictures, and I'm like, you have one picture, and I'm 13 years older than her. So I was going through that, and then when it came down to the abandonment part, like I didn't know how to separate the abandonment part from the rejection part, but I felt a lifting at my wedding when he walked me down the aisle in a tuxedo. I had on one, he had on one.
Mhm. Mhm.
That was huge. And then the next thing was when I was in the hospital and he popped up and he was like, I'm your daddy. I would be. And it made me feel so little girlish.
Because that's
And
what
I
the
was
little
like,
you needed,
right.
and it was
And,
speaking
but
to
I,
you.
exactly. And but again, it was related to just that. I could understand that on a personal level, but look how it affected me. And it also affected me in spirituality because I realized I didn't have a healthy trust for men. And because Christendom teaches us that God is a man, which we know more differently now, but it teaches us that God is a man. And because I had to fight for myself, stand for myself, rely on myself, it was hard for me to truly trust a man in that aspect. It didn't guide my sexuality. I just never liked men. So that was never a question. It just, that was not my taste. And I didn't have to try crack to know I didn't like crack. But,
Yeah, but that's the very thing. So you're speaking to the fact that there were these childhood experiences where you felt
mm,
abandoned, you didn't feel seen or loved by men, and then now you're growing up chronologically, you're one age, but emotionally, right?
Mm.
You're the age in which that hurt took place, and so now you're faced with an authority figure at the job who's probably
mhm,
telling you what you're supposed to do, or maybe saying it in a way that did not feel good. And so the bodily sensations, the emotions all came back. And I love EMDR. So I'm trained in EMDR. It's one of my go-to interventions because the things that we think we are currently experiencing oftentimes is attached to something that has not been resolved in the
mhm.
past. And so it
Mm.
keeps showing up. That's why we're triggered a lot of times. We may think
Right.
this is so unrelated, but the mind and the body has held on to those memories,
Mm,
those bodily sensations, and it can show up just like that because it
Mm.
has not been resolved.
right.
So
I'm
how does one understand that those things need to be addressed? Like, because if I don't know or ever been to counseling and I don't know that this is really a concern or this is hindering my growth as a person, how do I know to address that? How do I know to get help?
So I think back to the quality of relationships in my life. Am I constantly being fired or let go from a job? Am I bouncing jobs all the time? Am I bouncing in and out of relationships? Am I finding it hard to trust people or to be vulnerable with individuals? Am I poor with finances? Right. So
Okay.
the different areas of our life. And if I find that I'm struggling in multiple areas, although you don't have to struggle in multiple areas, it can just be one area.
Mm.
Right.
mhm,
But if I find that I'm struggling, I am not living the quality of life that I desire to live. Although therapy is not something that we talked about often in our
right.
community, it's a frequent conversation now. And so if I know that I'm not living the way that I want to live and that I want to experience something different, that's enough for me to say,
Hmm.
okay, I need help because this
Okay.
isn't working for me.
Right,
Is it
right,
Right.
right.
costing me money? Is it costing me relationships? Is it costing me my physical and psychological health? If it
Mm,
is, it's too costly. Let me go
Hmm.
and do therapy
Good point.
because you'll spend less in therapy doing the work to heal than you will losing money on the job or relationships or investments, right?
Mm,
So losing
mm,
money that way. I always say it's cheaper to go to therapy. Do the work to
mm.
heal. It's cheaper.
That's a good
mm,
point. That's a
It
really good point.
is.
I think a lot of people don't realize just that, right? They'll just continue to have these toxic relationships, right?
Mhm.
I found a couple of them. Trust me.
I mean,
I found
keep living. I think we've
yeah,
all been there.
right.
Right.
But we don't realize that something that is unresolved or something that we haven't worked out or worked through still needs to be addressed. And it will continue to surface. I tell my wife this all the time until you correct that, until you fix
Mhm.
that. And I tell the kids that all the time.
Mhm.
Another question that came to mind when you guys were talking is uh, are there specific experiences that are related to either social factors that can be amplified by our inner voice?
Tell me a little bit more about that.
So, like, say for
Oh, that's my
example,
therapy voice. Wait, let me get out of the. Wait.
so let's say for example, if there's some social, here's an example just came to me. So my father was not. My father, I knew him. He lived in the same town as I did as I was growing up, but he wasn't present, right? So there wasn't really a relationship there.
Mhm.
What I identified from that experience as a child, growing up as a young teenager, young adult, I was very difficult or very hard on men in terms of expectations, right? Whether or not they were taking care of their kids. We don't want to, socialize. I don't want to be cool with you. I just really had a lot of boundaries around that because of that relationship. So because of that, those are my experiences. But any other social factors or anything else that could play into
Poverty
what would
finance,
amplify?
right?
Ooh,
Poverty finances.
okay.
That can
Hmm.
be a huge one. If you witness the loss of a sibling, and then death happens again and with a different relationship, that can stir up some stuff. Um, yeah, physical, sexual trauma
Oh,
can. There are plenty of things. So I'm
okay.
trying to name a lot. I'm trying to name them, but the main one that comes to mind right now is that financial piece.
Yeah.
The financial piece, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's good because again, I think a lot of people sometimes when they look at our podcast or they go back or they comment or whatever, then they're reminded of some things that either they're doing or they've done in the past.
Mhm.
And because they haven't addressed it, they don't understand why. Oh, well, I'm still dealing with that 20 years later. Well,
Right.
yeah.
So I think if you're dealing with housing insecurity, right, as a kid,
Okay.
so you didn't
Okay.
know where you were going to sleep or how long you would be in a certain location. If you dealt with food insecurity, so wasn't sure if you were going to have dinner that day. That stuff shows up in our adulthood in
Hmm.
whether or not we purchase a whole bunch of food because we never want to know what it's like to be without, or we make sure if we don't have anything else, we have a roof over our head because we know what it's like to not know where we're going to rest. If we part of juvenile justice system growing up, it shows up in adulthood if we have not resolved it, and sometimes just in the most unhelpful ways. I think addiction, right? So how do
Mm.
I self-soothe? Am I going to gamble? Am I going to use illicit substances? What, self-medicate in order to not feel this? So it shows up.
You all in
So
my house.
I'm just gonna say, first of all, you can come from my address at any time. But the good thing is I know it exists,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna tell you how I dealt with it. And I know it's wrong because a lot of people try to I can't even think of the word. So it's a defense, it's a trauma defense.
Okay.
And so I had that. My mom moved almost every hour. I remember waking us up in the middle of the night. Hey, Joy, get your stuff. We finna leave. And we'll get in the car. She'll tell me to get my sister. We get in the car and we in a different state by morning, getting registered for school that Monday. We didn't know. We were, when I say homeless,
Mhm.
homeless. We stayed in an abandoned, it was my great grandma's house who had burnt down. We got there. We had to clean the soot off the walls. There was no roof. There was a blue tarp over the roof. And we used to take it back on good nights and then put it back when it rained. Use bathroom in buckets. One time we had to share a 12-ounce soda. just for us three to go to sleep. And us three slept on it was orange crushed velvet day beds.
Mhm.
So I know, so I made it a mission to never be there.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it showed up to me was my wife calls me a hoarder, but I'm a clean hoarder. I
Okay.
still got food in my cabinet that's, even though it got a shelf life of 5 years, oh, I'm gonna extend it 5 years. I have MREs in the, like, I'm always
Right.
prepared
Yeah.
to be, I got water in the trunk, I got MREs, and it's almost to a level of paranoia. And then the same thing with not having things as a child. When I got a job and made money, I don't make a decision on items. If I want it, I want it, and I'm buying six of them.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so when I went and I was cleaning out my cabinet, I'm like, I literally almost have 12 shirts still in the pack that I haven't even touched, and now they're a little too small. And I'm
Mhm.
sitting there like, I'm gonna still try to
I'm
put
gonna
them on.
hold on
I,
to it.
I'm gonna hold on to, and
Mhm.
I hold, and like to the point where we have to have separate rooms just for clothes because I have that much. I've always had a 2 to 3 bedroom by myself just to have my stuff.
Mhm.
And so, like,
Because you
even when
shared
we,
a 12-ounce soda. So
yeah,
now that you can have your own stuff, you ensure that you have your own stuff.
exactly. And like I even tell my wife, she'd be like, we don't have no food in the house. First of all, we do. If you got a pack of noodles, you got food. Now, and I look at it like this: if I got a bag of rice and some vegetables, we gonna eat, even though we know that we're gonna eat real good. But that's the way my mind is. Like, you can't tell me that we don't have no food. If you got a pack of noodles and some water, you got it. You know, and to me, I I what's the word I'm looking for?
You
Not that
justify.
I accept it, justified and
Mhm.
validated it as, I just want to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
just in case.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it's not, impeding or putting me in debt or anything like that, it's acceptable. And and even with the relationship part, oh, I can disassociate in the drop of a dime. And I know that about myself. And at one time I prided on it because I'm like, oh, you can disappear my life while you standing here.
Those you trying to protect yourself. It's a safety behavior.
And
It's a safety
exactly.
behavior. It's not
But now
healthy, but
I'm
it's a
learning.
safety behavior.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And now I'm learning, like, yeah, you might want to handle that different. No, you're absent.
Yeah.
Especially if I broke up with you. And it depends on what you did too. Oh, it's over.
You can see him and not see him.
Man,
Walk right
let me tell
past
you.
him. They
Oh,
don't
I'm
exist.
good at that. I did that today at work. I walked in, it's two people I ain't like, and the people who know I don't like them too, they bust out laughing. I walked in. I spoke to everybody,
But the
and I
well,
carried
at
on the
least you
conversation.
know.
And I carried on the conversation with the entire group. We laughed, yeah, blah blah blah. And when they got to talking, I continued my conversation as if their voice had no sound. Like, I don't feel no type of way.
Well,
So
clearly that's
So
not healthy.
right, but
it made me feel
see, the
good.
first step is at the awareness and admitting because you can't
Right,
unknow what you know, and so
Right.
now there's an opportunity for you to do something different if you want to do something different. But
that's
if
it.
not,
If I want to,
yeah, yeah. It's not. I tell my clients all the time. It's not about ability. It's about willingness. Because you have the ability to do something different. Do you want to do something different?
with that
And we can't
disassociation,
make you
nope.
do anything
I'm gonna
different.
hold that because I'm like, I like the fact that you could be sitting right there, and at one point it got bad one time. To the person came up to me and they was like, "You don't remember me?" And I swear to God, I could not recall them for nothing. That's how much I disappeared you out of my existence. And then when I thought about it, I'm like, we used to live together. Oh well, keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
I
I,
love it.
I will leave that alone. But what I will, I'm going to leave it alone. But what I thought about is that as a kid, I was raised in a single parent home, shotgun home. Mother worked two jobs sometimes. And so I was that kid who, at an early age, learned how to get on the bus from elementary school,
Hmm.
catch the bus miles to get home, walk home, have my little key, put it in the door, lock the door,
Mm-hmm.
turn off the alarm, right? Put the dinner in the microwave. She made me incredibly self-sufficient. But
Right.
I was saying that to say I didn't know that would have been considered low income
Mm-hmm.
because she never showed me. We never went
Right.
out. So that meant when I became an adult and she transitioned unexpectedly, I had to figure out how to rob Peter to pay Paul because I did not know, right, how to. I had to figure it out because she didn't show me
Ah.
the
Right.
struggle, right? And how dare I struggle when she didn't struggle? I didn't see her struggle. So the inner child in me said, you know what? You can't struggle either. And so
Right.
when you were asking, what's your experience? I think that's the one that often comes to mind. And because she was so independent, when I needed help, I wouldn't ask for help.
Mm.
Like that hyper independence
That's
kicked in
it.
because I didn't see my mother going to folks for help. She figured it out, which meant I had to figure it out to my detriment. And thankfully, I had people around me who would call me out and say, listen, what you're doing isn't working. Now, this is what I can do to offer some help so that we can change this up a little bit. But because I didn't see that as an adult, the little person in me got incredibly scared.
Mm.
You made two good points. The first is how our generation was taught to be independent, which gives us a side eye to the younger generation. We were like, just figure it out. I had to figure it out. You can figure it out. Google it, something. We were taught how to be independent too much because going to your second point, we didn't know how to ask for help. And where that comes in the workplace, especially being African American, we got to show you that we already know it because we know that we already looked at in a particular way.
Yeah.
But then, in the same sense, then when you ask for help, because that was my issue, I learned to ask for help. And then when I asked for help, it felt like the situation got worse because I asked for help. So then
Mhm.
I reverted back to, I just figure it out by myself because,
Mhm.
I work around a lot of, flower cousins. And because of that,
Don't
when,
make me lose my job.
no, it's the
Laughing
truth.
at you. I'm not supposed to laugh at. No, don't make
Okay.
me lose my
But
job.
but then when you ask for help, they present the help in such a way like you're annoying them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so then therefore when you like, okay,
I
this is
figured
not
out.
coming up, it's like
Mhm.
I'm gonna figure it out. But then when I figure it out wrong, then you want to come back and say, well, I was always there to help. And then I got to bring up that email from 2 months ago. No, you wasn't. Because when I asked,
Mhm.
this is your response. And
Mhm.
regardless on what people say, you can feel tone in an email.
Mm.
Mhm. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
You
absolutely.
can feel tone
Absolutely.
in a text message. So
Absolutely.
when with your response, this made me feel unwelcome into
Mhm.
your knowledge base.
Mhm.
So now I got to go figure it out myself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do we navigate through that? Yeah, how do we navigate through that?
So I think about the expense of navigating through that. So taking all of our time and energy trying to figure something out, and then when we've given our all and we still haven't gotten it right, right? So that's an emotional hit. That's an emotional hit, and it can be a financial hit as well because can you lose your job as a result
Mhm.
of not getting it right? Um, I want to go back to just for a moment the the you mentioned like the kids figure it out. Like we were taught to be independent to a fault, and so now our ability to empathize with some of the younger folks, it's really hard. But I think
Mm-hmm.
but I think why make them get it through the mud? Like if we have the information, why not share it with them, assuming that they're open to receiving the information? Because that can be hurtful or harmful in and of itself. So if you're a
Mm-hmm.
little one who's always had to figure it out, get it through the mud, because the adult that should have been supporting you has not supported you, then as adult, that reinforces that hyper independence. Even when you know that what you're doing is counterproductive to your wellness, you will not ask for help because that wasn't modeled for you. And so
Mm.
you may be making multiple unnecessary mistakes because you're unwilling to ask for help, because the last time you asked for help, maybe you were hurt. So I see it both ways.
Now, I can say for me, especially in the workplace, even with our children, I don't want you to suffer. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna make sure you have as
You
much
have what you need.
information and resources as possible. What makes me become unempathetic
Mm-hmm.
is when you don't even put forth an effort, but you always want to use the resource. I'm not your informational ATM. Well, you
Gotcha.
have to show some form of effort
Mm-hmm.
or an interest in taking the information and going from there. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, that's when I retreat on. I'm not a gatekeeper. I will give you so much information till I will talk blue in my face.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, especially um with our children, we have older children, and when I'm telling them from the mistakes that I made, from the level of experience that we have, and then you're telling me where I'm wrong, one, two, you're not even understanding like what our youngest son, well, not the youngest, he's 11. So the how old is TJ? 17. He wanted to start his shirt line. I'm all for it because if you got a business gonna make money, let us help you. So
Mm-hmm.
the way he presented it, I said, well, I didn't tell him his way was wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
said, think about it this way. He's 18. Think about it this way. If you order from this site, do this, do this, do this, you're going to come out better financially because you don't have this cost, that cost, this cost. And the look, the reaction, his disposition told me that I was wrong. And I took
Mm.
a step back
That's
and
different.
I took all of that. And I'm like, well, let me shut my mouth because obviously I don't know shit.
That's different. That's different. So you offered the assistance and they did not want to receive it. That's different. It's also different when um, you are ready to offer information and the people just absolutely don't want it. They're not showing the effort. They're not, pulling their weight. So I definitely get pushing back. I'm talking about for those folks who are they're walking the walk, they're talking the talk, and they're still struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we let folks continue to struggle despite the
Gotcha.
fact that they're doing the very best that they can do. So no, what you're talking completely different. If you don't want this valuable information, I tell
Yeah.
friends all the time, y'all coming to me, I'm giving you stuff that people pay for all the time. It's up to you to
Come
choose
on
whether
now.
or not
These
you want it. So no, I get that.
So, is there ever a time? Well, let me back up. Right. So we talked about some insecurities or some things, some challenges in our little person uh, experiences. One of those things, man, let's say if we, have food insecurities, right? Is there a time where we need to quiet that voice to modify our behavior so that we're not continuing? I don't want to say it's a bad behavior or a bad habit, but it, sometimes it can be excessive, right?
Mhm.
So is how do we curb or address that without necessarily having to go talk to a therapist about, hey, I'm still, buying 200 noodles and I'm the only
don't talk
person.
about my noodles.
She's talking about them.
Don't talk about my noodles.
So what I think you're speaking to is the difference between helpful and unhelpful behaviors, or healthy and unhealthy behaviors. And so if you're deciding, okay, I don't want to go to a therapist, or this is not the time, I think it's important to ask yourself, what's the function of this behavior? Am I purchasing these things because I need these things, because my shelf is empty and it's time to restock? Or am I purchasing these things out of fear that something is going to happen in the future, and so I want to be prepared?
Okay.
What's the function? Why are you purchasing it?
Okay. That's good.
You know what? Another way it shows up that we don't consider when we go to restaurants, you know how you don't want to be wasteful because in the church you're taught not to be wasteful. So you have to finish that plate. And you know good well you full. Or you finishing it. So when you grow up, you don't want to throw it away because you've been taught so hard not to be wasteful. And, because I had to deal with that myself to the point where I'm like, I'm okay with saying, no, I don't need it to go plate. Now, if I really want to eat it later, that's something different.
Mhm.
But I have to be okay with saying, you know what, I'm satisfied with the meal and I don't need to take these little remaining little pieces home to feel satisfied and not wasteful.
Mm.
Yeah. So my good government paying job, I work in bariatrics. And
Hmm.
so I'm helping a lot of individuals rewrite that narrative. So as kids, you're shamed if you don't clear the plate. You're told you can't
Hmm.
leave the table if you don't eat all
Mm-hmm.
the
Ungrateful,
broccoli. Or
everything.
we have kids in other countries who wish, on other continents, who wish they had this food. So yes, you're made to feel bad if you don't eat it. And so as a result, in adulthood, now you're overeating, you're stuffing yourself or making yourself sick because of that message that was taught to you as a kid, versus I can eat a little bit now and I can package it up and eat it later if I
Right.
want to. But that's an example of messages that that inner child internalized. And now
Mm.
as an adult, it comes out in this way, and it's overeating because I don't want to waste, or
Yeah.
I know what it's like to not have,
Right.
therefore I will not waste.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. I just always wanted to take home the church cake because that was good. That was a good snack.
Come on,
But
after a good
that made
service, you
it.
get a good
The
piece of
pound
pound
cake on
cake.
top of the bread
Oh
No, you
in
got
the
to
little
keep in
Ziploc
mind, we
bag.
earned that. We earned that pound cake when we done been in church all day.
All
I
Exactly.
day,
earned this.
There you
all
go.
day.
There you
Mhm.
go. That's what
You
it's
done
gonna
had
be.
me all day, and that little butterscotch and strawberry candy didn't keep me. Mm-mm.
So, doctor, can you help us determine what some effective strategies or practices to kind of maybe understand the difference between like insecurities, the things that the little person need to address, and the other part to that is uh I guess especially if we're in relationships or in a work environment, do we have to tell anybody that we're working on these things? So if I do these things, then bring them to my attention so that I, that just in my consciousness, right? Do we even
Okay,
owe people that?
so you just
Oh,
asked
them
me three
nothing.
questions, and I'm gonna try to
I'm
answer
sorry.
them. So one, do we need to tell people? I'm gonna try to do it backwards. Do we need to
Okay.
tell people? You may not have to tell the people on your job, but the
Mm-mm.
people closest to you, who engage with you, who can possibly offer support and encouragement and accountability, you want them to know that I'm working through these
Okay.
things. And so if you see me doing X, Y, and Z, this is what I need from you. I don't need
Okay.
you to talk negatively to me. I don't need you to berate me, but I need you to offer me some compassion and some empathy and some patience while I'm navigating this. And you get to tell me that this behavior that you're engaging in hurts me, because then that's some additional information that I can use to do the things that I need to do to heal, and to correct my behavior. Because
Right.
let's keep in mind, there's people always say it is hurt people that hurt people. I say it is hurt people who are unwilling to do the work to heal that hurt people, because
Mm-hmm.
people who are doing the work to heal will not want others to know hurt. Okay.
Okay.
So that's one
That's
thing. So
good.
definitely letting the people closest to you know, so that it's not something that you're trying to navigate by yourself. In terms of what can we do, to kind of maybe to do the work to heal, I'm going to always say therapy. But
Hmm.
even before then, I think it's important to acknowledge that inner child. So I think about little kids when you don't give them attention. Sometimes they start jumping and they do whatever they need to do to get your attention. That inner child is doing whatever that inner child needs to do to get your attention. But oftentimes it is an unhealthy or unhelpful or undesired behavior. So, one, acknowledging that little person in you, saying, hey, I know that you are scared, you are hurt, you are frustrated, right? And you're needing some attention. And as the
Mhm.
adult you, I'm going to do what I can to speak life into you and to get
Mm.
you what you need to heal. I think one of the things that we lose when we are hurt as a child is our wonder, our creativity, our playfulness. And so as much as possible, allowing yourself to be playful, to engage in activities that bring you joy. Get that coloring book, get the jacks, do those things that you used to do as a kid that made you laugh maybe
Mm-hmm.
before the hurt showed up. I'm always a fan of journaling. So I
Ooh.
know people like to do video journals and they like to type, but there's something about pen and paper. There
Hmm.
is something that gets uncovered or unearthed when we journal, because when we're writing, we don't censor ourselves. And so allowing yourself to sit and name the hurt, maybe write a letter to that
Mm,
inner
that's
child,
good.
giving her permission or him permission or them permission to heal, letting them know that they are not alone in this particular struggle. Reaching out to people who will pour into you. And I say that often. When you are doing the work to heal, you are incredibly vulnerable and you
Mm-hmm.
will be triggered because, especially if you're doing EMDR like Joy, EMDR will stir up some stuff. It'll make
Man.
you
Mm,
recall memories that you put on a shelf and thought, you've hidden for a long time. It brings stuff up. And so being able to care for yourself in that manner. So writing it down, naming it so that you can work through it.
good,
So
good.
would you say, in addition to that, is it healthy for a person to, okay, let me give the story first. I would think believe I was 25
Mhm.
and I had never had an easy bake oven. I needed an easy bake oven.
Get
Never
you
had
a
one.
oven. Absolutely.
And my spiritual father, which is Larry Reed, I've
Mhm.
been with him for years.
Okay.
Um, so he was my pastor when I was in my younger 20s. And he asked what I want. I think of him or Apostle. One somebody asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And I jokingly said, I want an easy bake
Easy
oven.
bake oven. Mhm.
Man, let me tell you, I cried something ugly when he gave me that easy bake oven. I was like, oh, it was just so much. And the reason I brought that up is because would you recommend, especially for people who miss something, like you can go buy it and it's
Absolutely.
like you hold on to it. I ain't gonna lie, I kept that easy bake oven for a while.
So don't just hold on to it. Engage with it. Use it, because when we experience those childhood hurts, to some extent, that child stops playing.
Mm,
Right?
Yeah,
The child is now responsible for protecting itself by any means necessary. And so I don't have time to play because I got to make sure that you survive. So absolutely. So for you, it's the easy bake oven. When I found some jacks recently, you would have thought that I hit the lottery, right?
right.
And that spoke to my inner me. So absolutely, go back to those. It's okay to be playful, and you don't have to have a kid around. Listen, I will go and watch a cartoon at the movies with my adult self and get my
Mm-hmm.
popcorn without a kid. That is okay.
yeah.
Man, fuck them
That is
kids.
okay.
Oh man. So listen, I
Oh my
got
gosh.
I got another question that just came to me, right? So
Sure.
Joy and I both have adult children, right? And so
Mhm.
like we've been talking this entire show, sometimes the things that we haven't quite addressed as adults, we don't necessarily want to put on or project onto our adult children. So
Mhm.
when we notice things that they're doing that are of the same behavior or same patterns that we did when we were kids, should we address that with them? But I guess my fear is when we do address it with them, I don't want to give them a complex that they don't necessarily have because it may not be a big deal to them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
So
so addressing it, asking a question will not give them a complex. You're asking
okay,
for informational purposes because you care. You can
okay,
even phrase it as, I noticed I used to do some of the same things that you're doing now, and I know I did it because of this reason.
mm-hmm,
you know, has something happened, or tell me about your story? Because as parents, I know that, well, I'm not a parent, so I don't want to say I know that, but sometimes parents think that they know their child's entire story.
Right.
And there's
Hmm.
so many things, unfortunately, that children will not tell parents. And so that's even an opportunity to have a conversation. Hey, tell me about your childhood. I know that I was there, but you know, did I miss anything? Is there something that you experienced that brought you joy, that made you feel scared, that I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's a
I
good
think
point.
that's okay.
Yeah.
No, and
That
that
deepens your
is healthy.
relationship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think
I don't
that's
think we
different
ask
from what
enough.
we had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we wasn't asked and we wasn't
Nothing.
allowed to ask. So it's like you
Yeah.
didn't have a voice. You stayed in the child's place.
Get in a
I
child's
feel
place.
sad. Go sad them
Mhm.
dishes. Like that was a real statement.
Listen. Yes.
You know, we know what
Yes.
outside mean because we couldn't come in.
So the one that I can chuckle, I chuckle now, but I didn't chuckle as a kid. I'm gonna give you something to cry. Listen, you just
It's like I'm
spanked
already
me. What do
crying.
you mean? Stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry.
That is a good reference. I heard it plenty
Right.
times.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then
But our
you
feelings as kids, depending on the generation and our parents, they didn't honor our feelings. They didn't acknowledge it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so for some people, grow up minimizing their own feelings
Yeah.
because
and
their
now
feelings
that
were
yeah.
invalidated before. Mhm.
Like
Or
That's
it's
a good
dismissed.
point.
and me and my wife had that conversation. I'm so glad you brought that up because I didn't know how much I did that. I can
Mm.
go and spend thousands on somebody, but when it come down to me, I negotiate. Do I need it? What can I do without? And when we was talking about my birthday, and I don't make my birthday a big deal. One, since my mom passed, it just hasn't been a big deal because I don't get that phone call every year, that
Listen.
song. So it
Yeah.
just it don't become that important anymore. And we was talking about, and I was like, you know, I'm okay with just going to get some crabs and still be just as excited
Mhm.
for that birthday as if I had a huge birthday party. It's not that big to me. But then, like you just said, it was like I had to realize, why is it when it come down to myself, I can, regardless of how much money I circulate on myself, I can circulate. I can go to Dollar General or Dollar Tree, man, and I can come out feeling alive.
Mhm.
But I know my wife ain't gonna go to no Dollar Tree.
Mhm.
She rolled past Dollar Tree as if it's the plague. She want to go in Target or something where we got to spend some coin. And but then I had to realize, like, I can minimize myself easier than minimizing the other person.
Mm.
And the same thing where I remember telling somebody this with their children. I'm very bad. My baby gets any, I have a 4-year old. She gets any and everything she wants. I know that. But then I had to take a step back to make sure that I wasn't giving it to her from a place because I didn't have it, that she had it. No, I'm giving to her because I want her to have it, because one of the lies that we was told as children is I don't have McDonald's money. And we was realized that McDonald's was $1 back then. You had McDonald's money. You just ain't want to utilize that McDonald's money. But I always got McDonald's money, even though my baby don't eat McDonald's. She do Chick-fil-A. I got Chick-fil-A money for you because I'm not gonna tell that lie. When we
Yeah.
knew that happened, it was only $1.99.
Mhm.
Oh, that made me mad again.
See?
Cause I'm like, you had McDonald's money anyway.
I'm
I just
out
need
of
to make an
that.
appointment, don't it?
I'm out of that. Out of that. I'm out of that. And there's nothing wrong with giving your kids what you didn't have, even if the reason you're giving it to them is because you did not have it. If you have an opportunity to um, bless them. Everything in moderation, right? But we get to love on and care for the people that we care about however we want to. But here's the thing, if you are able to spend all this money on other people, but you negotiate it with yourself, there's
Mm.
work there.
Mm.
There's work there because
Yeah.
when you think about the love that you have for others, it should mirror the love that you have for yourself. And if they are worthy of whatever from Tarjay, then you're worthy and deserving of whatever from Tarjay. But again, I'm a Ross person and I like Dollar Tree. So,
Man. Oh my
so
God.
so I
I
get it.
love it.
I get it. But you're
I'm a
doing it because
Burlington
that's what you
girl.
like. You're not negotiating. You're doing it because that's what you like. The moment you begin negotiating,
And that was something I really just realized when we was just having the conversation about the birthday thing. And I'm like, I can really minimize a lot about myself when it come down to, because that is my love language. I speak gifts.
okay,
If you want to know if I love you, it's because I bought you something.
you're a
Because
gift giver.
that I'm a gift giver because I took the time to remember you. I thought about it. Like I know this is gonna make them happy.
Ooh, Joy, the coach, the millionaire,
Yeah.
mystic mindset transform. Okay, so what you just said is that that is how you show love, but you also
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure that that's how the person receives love, because you
And
may
I
spend a
yeah.
million bucks and that person just needed a hug. So,
But you know what? And this is when I went through counseling, this is what I came to, not to come to the conclusion, what I was helped to find where that lies. That's how my mom was. If she needs to get gifts. So I would buy her stuff so that she know I love her. But when I got married, of course I'm gonna make sure my wife gets what she want. I thought about it, but she the one was like, well, that's not what I want. Now she used to say it in the wrong way, and she in this chat, so she used to say it wrong. And when we went through couples counseling, we realized
right.
that, yeah, we realized that, okay, well, you could have said it better because that's the way I show love. But then, like you said, I had to learn that affirmation, validation, those were her love languages. So now I can speak what you're saying, long as you understand that when I do speak it in the way that I know how to speak it, you understand it, even though that's not your always way of receiving it. But you understand that I'm telling you I love you because I bought your house. I'm
You're
telling you I love you because I made sure that we not homeless. I'm telling
right.
you I love you because I'm making sure that you're driving good and everything like that because that's the way I was trained to show love. Make sure, my uncle made sure you're gonna take care of what needs to be taken care of. And then I wanted my mom's attention on a lot of things. So I had to go buy her something. And that's what got her attention. So yeah,
Mm,
we had to work through that. I'm more knowledgeable now, but I didn't understand it myself
mhm,
at
mhm,
all. I didn't
mm,
understand, but I had to see how it showed up.
mm. That's an
But now I can
interesting
get him a
point.
hug for $1 million. You can get a
Well, yeah,
hug.
me too. But I kind of feel the same way as you, Joy, but I don't. Oh, I should say I have the same behaviors, but I don't necessarily have the same reason, right? So I
Mhm.
don't mind. Well, my wife's birthday is on Christmas Day, so for her, Christmas she's always had not the best Christmas one because
It's her
sometimes
birthday.
yeah, as a kid things weren't under the tree for her. So and for me, I try to make it special for her because I know she's had
Hmm.
so many bad Christmases, even though it's not my responsibility to replace teenage and
Right.
childhood days, right? But my point in saying that is that I don't mind giving or doing something that she wants or that she needs or that she asked me for. But when it comes to me, like she'll ask me what do I want for my birthday, I'm like, oh, just whatever. But it's
Yeah.
not because it's not because I don't want her to do anything. It's really because if I want it, I'm gonna go get it. You know what I'm saying? So it's for
Yeah,
different
that's a good
reasons, and that
point.
that makes
Right.
sense for me, right? So I don't feel bad, but I don't want to do the work. Do that work.
So
I'm
just
being
write down
honest.
one or two things throughout the year that you could potentially want. Make it easy for her. Make it
Yeah.
easy for her. But
No,
yes,
they don't like our
I
list.
can
We
go and
we
get
got
it
expensive
myself. And
taste.
so I don't have a need or want because I can get it
Okay.
whenever
Okay.
I want it. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sounds better. That sounds better. Okay. I
So
feel
now,
better.
cause see, I like that because I
Yeah.
like that perspective. What you said, it's like I can go get it at any time, but no, I can't go get my Rolls Royce at any time. So obviously that can't be on the list.
So put that on the list. You never
I
know.
did. You hear that, Shay?
Put it on the
You hear
list.
what the doctor said? It's on the
You,
list.
you never
Oh,
know where the blessing comes from. Put it on the list. Okay. Put it
that's
on
my
there.
wife
Because
chiming in
we
right
had, to,
there.
Oh, right.
I
Okay.
know, but I
No,
like
so
that. I like that.
yeah, I do too. And I don't think I realized that, or I really think that the
See?
people would recognize that that is an area that needs to be addressed, right? Because they've justified it in their minds. this whole time, right? They don't see that as being a problem. And so that's, I guess that's my fear, is a lot of times people will navigate and walk through life because and have these behaviors and do these things, not knowing that they're not healthy behaviors, not knowing that
Right.
these are things that I need to address.
Mhm.
I get that. And my lists are not ridiculous. My
You
taste
can
buds
have
are
a
what they are.
variety of things on the list, but keep in mind your partner is not your they can't mind read.
Yeah.
And so if you're a
Why
person
not?
where you have, if you're a person, you have everything, you don't need anything, after several years, it becomes hard, right?
Yes.
To,
Right.
to get something that may surprise you. So just keep a list.
Yeah.
Just make it easy for them. Don't act like that.
Yeah.
I,
Or
I,
we could just be
no.
creative. Like
Or
this
you could be
time.
creative.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
even maybe that's on your list. Let's do something creative.
Yeah. Right. And I agree. Like you said, if you've been
Mm-mm.
together for many years, and she and I've been together more than 10 years now. And there's been times, if I'm being completely transparent, I may have gotten her the same card a couple of years, but
Well,
and I may have even gotten the same gift a couple of years. But I'm human.
We're not blaming that on the inner child. You can't get away
no,
from
that
Right.
ain't the inner
We're not
child.
blaming that on the
That's
inner
you
child.
forgot.
The little you. Mm-mm.
No,
Nah.
I
Listen,
don't even. Mm-mm.
well, no, this has
Johnny,
been a really great conversation.
right?
Go ahead. What are we going to say, Joy?
No, I was just thinking. I was thinking out loud, like, dang, does she even like cards? I listen. If that card don't open up and something don't fall out of it, I just feel like we wasted a card. That's the kind of wife I have. So I don't.
Just a thought.
I don't know about nobody else's, but mine, if it don't fall out and she had to act like she didn't see it drop out, it ain't happening.
They are not in this space to defend themselves. I'm not getting
No,
into
she
that.
is. She in this space. She
Oh,
gonna say something
okay.
because she
Okay.
always got something to say. But that, I mean, you just live with that. Like I used to be all that good, sentimental. Oh, let me get you a card and tell you how much I love you. Let some dollars don't fall out. It's gonna be hell to pay, and ain't nobody got time for that.
So then you
Wow.
already know. So
Oh,
I'm
put
already
some dollars in
prepared.
the card
yeah.
and then do
Yeah.
the sentimental stuff. Surprise her.
But
Don't
I'm
let her get
also an
comfortable.
ass. Like I
Don't
do
let her
weird.
predict it.
Yeah, like no, I ain't gonna do it just because. But then it's in the trunk because I don't feel like hearing it later. But
Yeah.
no, this has been awesome. I
Yeah.
got a question. Do you take insurance? If you do, which ones? How can a person get in contact with you?
Right.
Um, I probably need a couple of more sessions, and I think that let's start there.
I'm here. So yes, I accept insurance. I accept Cigna insurance only. I am what's called SIPAC approved, which means that I get to see folks in over 30 plus states.
Okay.
Although I'm
Maryland.
in Louisiana and Tennessee. Did you say Maryland? Maryland, I believe, is a SIPAC state. So, yes, can see folks in Maryland. I'm fortunate to have a group practice. And so there's another phenomenal Black woman psychologist in the practice who's also accepting new patients as well, or new clients as well. So you can reach out to us. You can go to www.unhcounselingservices.com. You can find me on social media. I guess I should know them. Instagram, UNH underscore PhD, and then Facebook, Dr. Yumika Hankton. Telephone number 901 300
You
9082.
see that?
First availability. Yes, yes.
I want to do the EMDR thing
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So just reach out, and the other person is also trained in EMDR. Listen, we got you. We got you.
Okay.
And www.essenceofselfretreat.com. So I have a women's retreat coming up in the end of January, and we have a few
Mm,
available slots left. So those two websites.
Okay. That's
that's
wonderful.
awesome.
Listen,
Thank you.
we certainly appreciate you again for taking the time out of your day to kind of help us unpack the little person within, right? I know I've
Hmm.
learned quite a bit about myself
Yeah.
and my experiences and what things that I perhaps really need to address with my counselor, right? I
Mhm.
don't mind calling her at all and say, hey, I need to get back on your calendar
Get
because
on.
Right. I just
Maintenance.
discovered some things that I need to
Mhm.
address, So
Absolutely.
what we hope is that our audience and our followers have listened and maybe identify some things within themselves that they need to address. And they're certainly welcome to reach out to you and your other partner within your firm, and just just get help somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
That's it.
Do something. You can't keep doing what you've been doing and expect the same result or different results. I'm sorry.
Definition of insanity, doing the very
Exactly.
same thing, expecting a different result. It's not working out.
Exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
working for you. Yeah.
We're trying to get to our best selves. I don't know about y'all.
That's it. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's
Thank
it.
you all so very much for allowing me to join the conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely going to invite you back. So we'll
Please
keep
do.
you reach out to you for your 2025 calendar and figure out what we're going to talk about next.
Please do. Looking
Okay.
forward to it.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for everything. Everybody needs something. A therapist even have a
Absolutely.
therapist. And everybody want to be their best self. And you can't be your best self until you know what your best self looks like.
I tell
Mm-hmm.
my
So
clients they have a grand therapist. Absolutely.
yeah,
If your therapist does not have a therapist, get a new therapist. All right.
right.
That's good. That is awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. Have a great balance of your day. I'm going to go ahead and end this podcast. But again, we appreciate everybody who listened, who followed, who comment. Please like and share and keep a regal mindset.
Absolutely.